The alien ship drifted through endless space with no sound except the faint hum of broken systems and the flicker of dying lights. Its hull was torn and scarred from a violent encounter that none of the crew wanted to remember. The engines sputtered weakly and then fell silent, leaving the ship to float helpless in the cold darkness of the void. Panic spread quickly among the crew as they realized their situation was worse than anything they had ever trained for. Oxygen levels dropped little by little, and every breath felt heavier than the last. The crew looked to their captain with desperate eyes, waiting for orders that might save them. But even the captain felt a deep fear growing inside his chest. The communication officer tried again and again to send distress signals across the stars, pressing buttons with trembling fingers as static filled the room. Every frequency was tested and every channel was opened, but no reply came back. The crew whispered to each other, wondering if anyone would hear them before it was too late. The silence of space felt endless and cruel. Hope began to fade like the weak light of their failing ship. One officer asked in a quiet voice if they should prepare for the end. The captain shouted no and ordered them to keep trying, because surrender was not an option. Not yet. The air grew thin and the temperature dropped. Frost appeared on the edges of metal walls and control panels. Alien crew members shivered as their bodies tried to adapt to the freezing cold. Hunger gnawed at their stomachs, but there was nothing left to eat. They had rationed everything down to the smallest crumb. The memory of their strong and proud fleet felt distant now. Here they were, broken and abandoned in an empty sea of stars. Some prayed to old gods. Others cursed their fate, but none of them truly believed rescue would come. Suddenly, the communication officer gasped as a screen flickered with movement. The distress signal that had been drifting without answer finally received a reply. The words came through rough and strange, a language they did not fully understand. Yet the tone was clear enough. Someone had heard them. The crew cheered weakly with what little strength they had left. The captain leaned closer to the screen and demanded a full translation. But the officer hesitated, because the reply came from a species the aliens had only heard rumors about: the humans. Whispers spread across the bridge as the crew repeated the word humans in disbelief. They had heard stories of these beings, stories of reckless bravery and strange inventions, stories of creatures who could survive in conditions that would kill others. Some called them dangerous, some called them insane, and some claimed they were unpredictable beyond measure. No one on the ship had ever met a human before, and now their survival depended on them. Fear mixed with fragile hope inside every alien heart. The captain asked for a message to be sent back, begging for urgent help, promising reward and alliance, anything that might convince the humans to save them. The reply came faster than expected. A confident voice filled the bridge, translated roughly into their language. The voice said, "Do not worry, friend, we are on our way. Hold tight. We fix broken things better than anyone else." The crew looked at one another, unsure if the words were comfort or warning, because the tone sounded less like kindness and more like excitement. Minutes turned to hours as they waited in silence, each tick of time made heavier by fear of what was coming. Finally, sensors picked up movement. A small human ship approached from the darkness. It was not sleek or elegant like alien designs. It looked patched together from old parts, sharp edges, mismatched colors, and an engine that roared louder than it should, yet it moved with speed and confidence. The sight made the alien crew even more nervous. How could such a rough vessel possibly help them? Still, they had no choice but to trust. The docking process was rough, metal scraping against metal as the human ship latched onto the broken hull. Alarms rang as pressure fields adjusted. Then silence returned as the airlocks connected. The alien crew gathered with tense faces near the entrance. Weapons were drawn, but their hands shook. They did not know if they were welcoming saviors or inviting madness into their home. The door hissed and opened slowly. Shadows moved on the other side, and then the humans stepped in. The first human through the airlock was tall and broad. His suit looked battered but strong. His helmet reflected the dim light, and when he removed it, the aliens saw eyes that shone with wild energy. He smiled in a way that made them both hopeful and afraid. Behind him, more humans entered carrying strange tools and heavy packs. They moved with relaxed confidence, as if danger meant nothing to them. The alien captain stepped forward with dignity and introduced himself, asking if the humans truly could repair the ship. The human leader laughed and said repair is easy, but upgrades are better. The aliens exchanged confused looks. Upgrades? What did he mean by upgrades? They only wanted survival, oxygen restored, engines repaired, systems brought back to normal. Yet the humans seemed to think of something else entirely. His crew fanned out across the ship, poking into panels and wires without waiting for permission. One of them pulled out a glowing tool that buzzed with strange energy. Sparks flew as he jammed it into a control panel. The alien shouted in alarm, but the human only grinned and said, "Trust me, this will be good." The ship groaned as power surged unexpectedly through its veins. Lights flickered and new displays appeared on screens that had been dead before. The aliens were shocked to see systems waking up that had not been part of their original design. The captain demanded to know what was happening. The human leader leaned against the wall casually and said, "Relax, Captain, you asked for repairs, but you will get more than you expected. We humans like to leave our mark. We never give back what we took in. The same way we found it, we always make it stronger." The crew felt their hearts racing with fear and excitement. They had been ready to die in the dark, and now they stood at the beginning of something they could not understand. The humans were inside their ship, tearing it apart and rebuilding it with reckless hands. And none of them knew if this was salvation or disaster waiting to unfold. And as the humans pulled out more tools and whispered strange jokes to each other while sparks flew, the alien captain could not shake the thought that by calling for rescue, they might have invited something far more dangerous than death itself. The human crew stepped deeper into the broken alien ship, moving like they had walked this path 100 times before, even though they had never set foot here until now. And the alien crew watched in silence with wide eyes, because the humans did not act like visitors or like saviors. They acted like they owned the place, and that unsettled everyone who stood there with trembling hands and racing hearts. The human leader, whose name was never clearly shared, kept his strange grin and began to scan the walls with a small device that blinked green and red lights the aliens had never seen before. And when the green light pulsed brighter, he slapped the panel and shouted to his crew, "Bring the kit. We are starting here." And without waiting for a response, his team rushed forward, dragging boxes that clanged against the metal floor, sounding more like weapons than tools. The alien captain tried to speak with calm authority, saying, "This ship only needs repair. Please focus on restoring the life support and engines so we can return to our fleet." But the human did not even look at him. Instead, he bent over and ripped open a panel with his bare hand. Sparks flew and smoke drifted through the room, and the humans laughed as if destruction was just the first step to creation. The aliens exchanged worried glances, whispering that maybe they had invited the wrong kind of help, because this did not look like simple repair at all. The communication officer whispered softly, "Maybe we should stop them," but the captain shook his head, because without the humans there was no chance of survival. So they watched as the humans tore deeper into the ship, their strange tools buzzing, cutting, welding, and replacing entire parts with glowing devices the aliens had never even imagined before. One human pulled out a cylinder that expanded like liquid light when placed inside the engine core, and suddenly the lights brightened across the entire ship, filling the hall with strange energy that felt alive. The aliens gasped, because systems that had been dead for days now hummed with power, but the readings on their control panels made no sense. The ship showed more energy than its design should ever allow. One engineer panicked, saying, "This is not possible. The reactor output is beyond safe limits. We could explode any second." But the human who had installed the device simply laughed and said, "Safe limits are for cowards. The real limit is what you dare to try." Fear and amazement mixed inside the alien crew as they followed the humans through the corridors, watching them rip apart rooms and replace circuits with wild inventions. One human brought out a tool that fired streams of molten metal, yet cooled instantly, forming shapes that fit perfectly into broken joints, as if the tool could think on its own. Another human released tiny machines that crawled across the walls like insects, repairing cracks and sealing leaks with incredible speed. The aliens could not decide if they were witnessing genius or madness. The captain demanded again for the humans to explain themselves, and finally the human leader turned with a casual shrug, saying, "You asked us to fix your ship, but we humans do not just fix, we make things better. It is in our nature to improve, to push, to break limits, and rebuild stronger than before. Your ship is weak, outdated, slow. But after we are done, it will not just fly again, it will roar through the stars like nothing you have ever known before, and whether you like it or not, Captain, you will. Thank us when you see what it can do. The alien crew felt a chill at his words, because he spoke with the confidence of someone who believed every sentence, yet his eyes burned with something reckless and dangerous. The captain tried to argue, saying, "We do not need more than survival. We only need to reach safety." But the human stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried more weight than a shout. He said, "Safety is an illusion, Captain. Power is the only real protection, and we humans know how to build power better than anyone." The aliens could not respond, because at that moment the entire ship shuddered. The deck plates vibrated as the engines roared to life on their own, glowing with new strength. A low hum filled the corridors, a sound that was not familiar, yet strangely thrilling. The navigation officer cried out in panic, saying, "The ship is moving," but no one touched the controls. The stars on the view screen shifted as the vessel leapt forward faster than it had ever moved before, and the aliens screamed in fear, clutching at rails while the humans cheered like children on a ride. The alien captain shouted to shut it down, but the human crew ignored him, typing commands into devices that connected directly to the ship's systems. The alien engineers tried to override, but their access was denied. Their own ship had locked them out. Somehow the humans had taken control, and they did it without permission, without hesitation, and without any concern for the fear boiling inside the alien crew. The ship tore through the void at speeds the crew thought impossible, and then, just as suddenly, it stopped, leaving them gasping in silence, staring at the endless stars around them. The navigation officer said with a trembling voice, "We have moved across half the sector in seconds. This drive is not in our design. Nothing like this exists." The human leader simply grinned again and said, "Now you begin to understand. We do not just repair, we transform." The aliens stood frozen, unable to decide whether to thank the humans or to throw them out the airlock. But one thing was certain: the ship was no longer theirs. It was something new, something dangerous, something alive with human touch. The captain tightened his grip on the rail, his mind torn between gratitude and dread as he realized that whatever path they had stepped onto, there was no turning back. And then, before anyone could speak, the sensors lit up red. A warning screamed across the bridge. Multiple ships detected incoming fast, unknown signatures converging on their location. The aliens stared in horror, wondering who had found them, while the humans only smiled wider, as if the real game had just begun. The alien crew clung to their stations as the warning lights flashed red across every panel, and the humans moved through the corridors with an energy that looked more like joy than fear, because where the aliens saw danger, the humans seemed to see challenge and adventure, and this strange difference unsettled every heart on the ship. The alien captain barked orders, demanding reports from every officer, but their voices trembled as they spoke. Sensors overloaded, engines, unstable weapons activating, without command shields fluctuating wildly. Every system seemed alive, yet none of it was under alien control. The humans, however, were grinning, as if the chaos unfolding was exactly what they wanted. One human shouted over the noise, saying, "This is good, this means the upgrades are sinking," and another laughed as sparks burst overhead, saying, "Relax, this is normal for first runs." The aliens could not believe what they were hearing, because nothing felt normal about a ship tearing itself apart and rebuilding at the same time. Walls shifted as panels slid open on their own, revealing circuits glowing with strange blue light. Conduits pulsed like veins, pumping energy through the vessel, as if the ship had become some kind of living creature. Alien engineers tried to analyze the changes, but their instruments failed to read the new systems. Nothing matched their technology, nothing even made sense to their minds, and fear grew stronger than hope. The communication officer whispered to the captain, "We have lost control entirely. This is not repair, this is take over." The captain glared at the humans, demanding they stop whatever madness they were doing, but the human leader only leaned casually against the sparking console, saying, "Stop. Why would we stop, Captain? Do you not see your ship is being reborn? You asked us to save you, and we're giving you something far greater. Survival is only the beginning." The aliens shouted back, "Survival is all we wanted," but their voices were drowned out as the ship groaned like a beast awakening from a long sleep. Engines roared without command, and the stars outside blurred into streaks as the vessel leapt forward, Once more this time faster than before, so fast that gravity itself seemed to bend. The crew clutched the rails, their bodies heavy against the sudden pressure. Some screamed in terror, while others prayed, but the humans laughed and shouted louder as if speed was a game to them. The navigation officer screamed, coordinates flashing wildly across the screen. "We are no longer in map space. We're crossing borders at impossible velocity. This should tear us apart. But somehow the hull is holding stronger than ever, systems adapting on their own." The captain demanded to know how this was possible, and the human leader simply replied, "This is what happens when humans touch broken things. We never just fix, we make something new, something bold, something dangerous." The aliens felt trapped between awe and fear because despite the madness, the ship was alive again, breathing with power that defied everything they understood, yet every pulse of energy felt like a warning that they had unleashed something they could never control. The weapons officer gasped as his console lit up. Weapons arrays were online, but not as before. They were shifting, transforming barrels, lengthening energy cells, glowing brighter, new designs forming themselves from the ship's own materials. As if guided by invisible hands, the alien crew backed away from the panels, whispering, "This is not repair, this is possession." The human crew moved with speed, tossing strange tools to one another, sparks flying with each adjustment. One woman used a device that spat streams of nanometal, which solidified instantly into armor, plating sealing cracks and reinforcing bulkheads. Another released swarms of tiny drones that crawled across the ceiling, weaving lines of light into new circuits. The aliens tried to intervene, but the drones shocked them, lightly forcing them back as if the ship itself rejected their touch. The captain roared in rage, demanding his ship be returned, but the human leader simply grinned, saying, "Captain, your ship is gone. This is ours now, and if you wish to live, you will accept it." The alien crew was stunned, silence filling the bridge, except for the hum of power surrounding them. Yet inside, each alien heart a choice was forming, to resist or to surrender. But before anyone could speak, the alarms changed tone, shifting from internal warnings to external threats. Sensors picked up movement ahead, a cluster of signatures, sharp, aggressive, hostile. The navigation officer trembled as he announced, "Pirate fleet, incoming, armed vessels closing fast, 30 ships, no way to escape." The aliens panicked, knowing in their old broken state they would have been helpless prey to such a force. Their ship would have been destroyed in seconds. But now, with this half-repaired, half-reborn vessel, they had no idea what would happen. The human crew, however, did not panic. They smiled like hunters seeing prey. One man cracked his knuckles, another strapped a heavy pack on his back, and the leader simply pointed at the screen, saying, "Perfect timing now. You will see the reason for our upgrades." The captain shouted that fighting was suicide. There were too many ships, and they had no control over weapons anyway. But the humans ignored him. The weapons arrays outside shifted into forms that no alien had ever designed, glowing lines carving across the hull like tribal markings, energy building with a hum that shook the decks. The weapons officer screamed, "The output is beyond anything recorded. This will rip space itself apart." The human leader only laughed, saying, "Yes, that is the point." The alien crew pressed against walls as the humans moved with frenzy, flipping switches, slamming devices into consoles, feeding more energy into the systems. The lights dimmed, then flared brighter than before, as if the ship itself hungered for battle. The captain tried to wrestle control from the panels, but the screens rejected his touch, responding only to human devices. The realization hit him hard. His own ship no longer belonged to him or his people. It belonged to the humans who had come in the name of repair. The pirate fleet grew larger on the screen, closing in with weapons armed. Their voices crackled over comms, demanding surrender, mocking the helpless vessel. But before the aliens could even consider response, the humans activated the new weapons. In a single blinding flash, beams of light erupted from the ship, slicing across space with impossible precision, tearing through pirate shields like paper. Explosions filled the void as ships shattered one after another. The aliens gasped and shocked, their mouths open in silent horror as they watched 30 enemies fall in moments. The bridge filled with silence, broken only by the laughter of humans who looked at one another with joy, as if they had just played a game. And one easily, the alien captain could not move his body, trembling with the weight of what he had just seen. His ship, once weak and broken, had become a monster in human hands, and now he realized there was no way back, no way to undo what had been done. And then, just as the last pirate ship exploded into fragments, the sensor screamed again, multiple new signals entering space, larger, stronger, unknown. The aliens froze as they realized the battle was not over, and this time the enemy might be far worse than pirates, while the humans simply smiled wider, their eyes shining with dangerous light as they whispered, "Now the fun really begins." The alien bridge was filled with flickering lights and the smell of ozone as smoke drifted from panels that had been overloaded by the strange human upgrades, and the crew stood frozen in disbelief as the remains of the pirate fleet scattered into silent debris outside their viewport. Because never in their lives had they seen destruction happen with such speed and such terrifying precision, and yet the humans celebrated as if they had just won a game at a festival. The alien captain gripped the rail with trembling hands, his voice low, but filled with anger as he demanded control of his ship back, yet the human leader tilted his head, smiling with a confidence that felt like mockery, and replied, "Control is an illusion, Captain. This vessel no longer belongs to you. It belongs to its new design and its new purpose. And if you want survival, then you must learn to accept that survival comes only through change. And change is what humans do best." The crew whispered among themselves, their voices shaking with both fear and wonder, because part of them wanted to resist, but another part whispered silently that maybe the humans were right, because they were alive now, when moments before they had been dying in darkness and despair, yet the cost of that survival was heavy. The ship that had once been their home was now unrecognizable, filled with humming energy, alive with systems that responded not to them, but to their human guests. Suddenly, the sensors wailed again, a sound sharper and more urgent than before, and the navigation officer cried out, multiple new signatures detected far larger than the pirate fleet approaching at incredible speed, and the captain shouted for details while the officer stared at the screen in horror, saying, "These are warships, advanced heavy cruisers, not scavengers, not raiders, but organized military hunters, and they are converging on our location with full weapons armed and ready." Panic rippled through the alien crew, because against pirates they had no hope before the upgrades, but against a real fleet there was no chance even with new weapons, or so they thought, yet the humans did not show fear. Instead, their grins widened, and their eyes lit with dangerous excitement. One human cracked his neck, as if preparing for battle. Another adjusted a strange device on his arm that pulsed with light, and the leader stepped forward, saying, "Good now. We will see what this ship can really do." The captain shouted, "This is madness. You will get us all killed. We must run. We must hide." But before he could say more, the ship itself responded without being commanded. The engines roared with impossible energy, stars stretched into lines, and the vessel launched forward on its own, tearing across space faster than light itself. The alien crew screamed, clutching at rails, and falling to the deck as gravity fluctuated around them. Yet the humans stood tall, steady, as if they had expected this wild surge all along. The navigation officer shouted, coordinates flickering across the screen, changing too fast to read. "We are not controlling this. The ship is flying itself." And the alien engineers tried desperately to override, but every system denied their touch, locking them out with barriers of alien unfamiliar code, as if the ship itself rejected their presence, while the human devices glowed green in their hands, granting them access to everything with ease. And the realization struck the aliens hard. Their ship had chosen new masters. Outside, space warped and bent, the stars rippled like water waves, and the aliens cried out in terror, because this was travel no species had mastered, not even their most advanced fleets. Yet here they were dragged through it by a vessel that no longer obeyed. There, where the captain demanded answers, screaming at the human leader, who only shrugged and said, "This is the upgrade package you asked for. Survival and power come together, and you should be thankful, because without us you would already be drifting as corpses in the dark." The ship slowed suddenly, and the stars returned, but what appeared on the screen made every alien heart freeze in horror. A fleet of heavy warships surrounding them, forming a cage of steel, and fire. The enemy demanded surrender, their voices booming over comms, mocking the damaged crew, telling them resistance was pointless, and that they would be captured and stripped of everything they had left. And the alien crew felt despair rising again, even stronger than before. But the humans did not look worried at all. Instead, they moved quickly to their stations as if this was the real test they had been waiting for. The leader smiled at the captain and said, "Watch carefully. This is the difference between your way and the human way." Then he gave a sharp command to his team, who activated systems the aliens had never seen, weapons panels glowing brighter than suns, energy humming so loudly the walls vibrated like drums, and the ship itself seemed eager to unleash chaos. The alien captain shouted that firing would be suicide. There were too many ships, too strong, too well armed. But his words were drowned out as the upgraded vessel unleashed a storm. Beams of searing energy ripped across the void. Shields of the enemy shattered like glass armor, split apart in explosions that lit the darkness. And yet the humans were not satisfied. They pushed the ship harder, every weapon firing in patterns that no alien tactical computer would ever calculate. Unpredictable strikes, cutting through the enemy like blades through paper. The alien crew could only watch in awe and terror as their once broken vessel danced among giants, faster, sharper, deadlier than any fleet they had ever seen. And though victory looked possible, they felt more like prisoners than soldiers, because they had no hand in it, no control. Only the humans guided this fury, and the ship obeyed them like loyal servants. Then, without warning, the ship twisted on its own, turning toward the largest cruiser, its hull glowing with power that built higher and higher, until alarms screamed, "Overload!" The alien engineers shouted, "This will tear us apart. The energy cannot be contained." But the human leader only raised his hand, as if calming a wild beast, and whispered to the ship itself, "Do it." And the vessel responded with a blast that ripped through the massive cruiser, splitting it into fragments with a force that shook the stars. Silence followed for only a moment before the remaining enemy ships scattered, fleeing in panic, unable to face the monster that now floated in their space, and the aliens slumped against walls, their bodies trembling, their minds unable to comprehend what they had just survived and what kind of power they were now riding upon. Yet the humans were laughing, celebrating, as if victory was nothing more than a fun game played on a long journey. The alien captain tried once more, his voice low and broken, begging for his ship back, saying, "This vessel is ours by right, give it back." And the human leader looked at him with cold amusement, replying, "Captain, this ship is no longer yours. It is no longer even what it once was. It is human now, born again in our image, and its destiny is tied to us, not you, so accept it or be left behind." Before the captain could answer, the ship itself interrupted with a deep hum, and the lights shifted across the bridge, forming strange symbols on the walls, patterns none of the aliens could recognize. But the humans smiled knowingly, as if the vessel was speaking directly to them. And the leader whispered to his crew, "There, it is the final phase beginning." The hull of the alien ship was filled with shadows and strange light that moved across the walls like liquid fire, and every alien officer inside stood silent as Captain Duran was led forward, his arms bound, but his eyes still fierce, like a soldier who would not bow. And in that silence, a new sound began to rise. It was a deep hum, as if the ship itself was alive and waiting for something. The alien commander stepped down from his high seat, his armor glowing with strange symbols that pulsed with energy. He looked at the human with cold, bright eyes and spoke in a voice that shook the air. He said, "Your species is strange. You ask for repairs, you receive upgrades, you gamble with danger, and you never break. And now I must know why." Captain Duran kept his head high, even with the guards pushing him down. He said, "We humans gamble because the universe does not wait. The universe does not care if we are ready or not. So we leap forward, and sometimes we fall, but other times we fly." The commander tilted his head, his expression unreadable, and then he gave a small gesture, and one of the officers brought a large crystal tablet, glowing with shifting light. The commander said, "This holds the records of your crew. In your ship, we watched everything. When you asked for repairs, you pushed for more power. When you asked for upgrades, you demanded risks. Your ship should have broken, yet it became stronger. Explain this." Duran looked at the glowing crystal and then at the many eyes staring at him. He said, "Maybe because we do not only repair machines, we repair spirit. We do not only upgrade metal, we upgrade willpower, and when both come together, no wall can stop us." The commander stared for a long time. Then he turned away as if considering something deep and dangerous. Finally, he said, "You speak with faith, but faith is not enough, so we will test you." The guards released Duran, and the floor of the hall began to shift. It opened in wide circles, revealing a deep pit glowing with blue fire from its core. Within the fire's shapes moved tall figures of energy with blades of light and shields of pure force. The commander said, "This is the trial of endurance. No one survives without breaking. If you stand against them, you will prove that your way of upgrades is more than madness." Duran felt the heat rise from the pit and the challenge in the air. He clenched his fists, but then he remembered his crew waiting for him, their eyes filled with hope. He shouted, "Send me down and let the test begin." The guards shoved him forward, and he dropped into the pit, his body landing on a ground of burning stone. The blue fire rose around him, and the figures of energy began to move their blades, cutting through the air with sound like thunder. Duran picked up a broken shard of metal from the ground and stood ready, though his body shook with the heat and the weight of fear. The first figure rushed forward, its blade flashing. Duran rolled aside, barely escaping the strike. The ground cracked under the force of the blow. He swung the shard of metal at the figure, and sparks flew as the shard struck its shield. The figure stumbled back, only for another to step forward. Above in the hall, the alien commander and officers watched in silence, their glowing eyes fixed on the human who fought with nothing but a shard and his own. Well, one officer whispered, "This is impossible. No one lasts more than a few breaths, yet he moves like a storm." Duran fought with everything his body had. Each strike of the figure shook him to the core, but he refused to fall. He remembered the long nights on Earth when he had trained as a soldier. He remembered the faces of his crew. He remembered the silence of space, and how every battle was fought not just with weapons, but with heart. He screamed with fury as he struck again and again until the shard broke in his hand. Now, weaponless, Duran faced the figures barehanded. He dodged their blows. He struck with fists and kicks. The blue fire burned his skin, but he did not fall. His voice echoed through the pit as he shouted, "This is the human way." The figures of energy slowed their movements as if surprised. One by one, they stepped back until only one remained, the largest, with a blade of pure light glowing brighter than the sun. It raised the blade and struck down at Duran, who caught the blade with both hands. The heat tore in his flesh, yet he held on, refusing to let go. He stared into the burning light and shouted, "Upgrades received." The pit shook, the fire roared, the figures of energy vanished into smoke, and Duran felt his knees, but did not collapse. He rose again, bloodied, but standing. The hall above shook with silence. No one moved until finally the alien commander raised his hand, and the silence broke into a sound like thunder. The commander spoke, "This human stands in the trial. Without breaking, this human survives. Where no one survives, he shows us that repair and upgrade are more than machines. They are soul, and we cannot call them weak. We cannot call them blind. Instead, we must call them something else." One officer asked, "What do we call them?" The commander looked at Duran, still standing with burned hands, and said, "We call them dangerous, and we must decide if danger is what we fear or what we need." Duran lifted his head, his breath heavy but steady. He said, "You asked for proof, now you have it. Humans do not stop. We adapt, we rise, and we gamble again and again until we win." The commander stared long and hard, then finally turned to his officers. He said, "The next phase begins. Prepare the council and prepare the machines. This human has earned the right to stand before the highest." The guards moved to take Duran away, but this time they did not push. They bowed slightly, as if respect had been forced upon them. Duran walked forward, his body broken, yet his spirit burning bright as the pit closed behind him. Above the hall, the ship itself began to hum louder, as if awakened by what had just happened. Lights along the walls shifted from cold silver to a deep glowing red, and the floor trembled. The commander whispered to himself, "Upgrades received indeed." And so Captain Duran was led deeper into the alien vessel where greater trials waited, but also greater truths. For the gamble was only beginning, and the danger had only grown. The night in the station grew silent, yet the silence was heavy, like the air was carrying secrets hidden between walls and wires. The humans were resting, but their minds could not sleep fully because they knew danger was not far, and their upgrades were still untested in real war, while the alien engineers monitored from shadows, recording every spark of human movement and every sound of their hearts. The commander of the human squad walked alone through the empty corridor. His boots echoed against the steel floor, and each step reminded him of the weight of leadership. He paused near a large viewport staring out into the dark void, where broken ships drifted like dead giants, and he whispered to himself that soon they would face the storm and only human willpower could decide if they survived or not. Behind him, an engineer appeared with a soft glow from his wrist device. The alien was small, with long limbs and eyes that never blinked, yet there was respect in his movement. He told the commander that the repairs were not just repairs anymore. The ship had been rebuilt around human instincts. The controls were alive with neural threads. The engines breathed with energy that responded to thought, not just touch, and the weapons were sharper than ever. Before, the alien said upgrades requested had become upgrades received, and upgrades received had now turned into something even greater. The commander listened, but his chest was heavy because he understood gifts from allies were never free. He asked what the cost was, and the alien hesitated before speaking slowly, saying the human way was strange. It demanded risk and sacrifice. Unlike any other race, the upgrades were made for minds that could endure pain, struggle, and fire, and not every human could survive the binding process. The commander closed his eyes, knowing tomorrow some of his crew might fall not in battle, but in the test of strength itself. Far away inside the crew quarters, soldiers whispered to each other, their voices low, like the hum of machines. They spoke of the binding ritual. They had heard rumors of neural fire that burned through nerves like lightning, of visions that could break a mind into pieces, and of strange voices that sometimes spoke inside the head. Once the link was formed, yet none stepped back, because fear was nothing compared to honor and survival, and every human in the room carried the weight of Earth on their shoulders. When the call came, they gathered in the chamber. It was wide and bright, with walls covered in glowing veins of energy like rivers of light running in every direction. Chairs waited for them, each one wrapped in cables and crystalline threads. The engineers prepared, silently moving with tools like delicate claws, while the humans strapped themselves down without hesitation. The process began, and the chamber filled with a low hum that shook their bones. Each soldier felt the first touch of the threads like cold water running under their skin. Then heat followed, rushing into their skulls like fire. Lightning ran down their spines, and every nerve screamed, but no scream left their mouths because they held on with clenched teeth and fists dripping sweat. Visions came like storms of images, spinning faster than thought. Some saw their homes on Earth breaking into dust. Others saw alien worlds filled with endless night. Some heard whispers, a promising power. Others heard cries begging them to stop. Yet through it all, their hearts beat stronger and louder until the chamber itself seemed to echo with human defiance. One soldier almost broke. He felt his mind cracking under the weight of alien knowledge rushing in. But then he remembered the laughter of his child and the warmth of his family, and he pushed back harder than the storm itself. His scream tore through the chamber, not of pain, but of strength, and with it the energy bent and settled into his body as if bowing to his will. One by one the soldiers endured, and one by one the threads fused into them until they rose from the chairs, their eyes burning with faint light, their movements faster, smoother, and their minds sharper. The upgrades had chosen them, and they had chosen to survive. The engineers looked with awe and fear, because never before had a group endured so fully without losing anyone to madness or collapse. The commander stepped forward, his body heavy with power, yet his mind calm. He declared that humans had proven their way once more, not by asking for safety, but by taking the storm head on. He told the engineers that this was only the beginning, and now the real test would come, when enemies returned to claim the station and silence the human spirit forever. The alarms answered his words. Red lights flashed across the chamber as the voice of the station AI warned of approaching vessels, unknown and hostile. The void outside, filled with shapes breaking out of warp shadows of massive ships, bristling with weapons ready to strike. The commander looked at his crew, and they looked back with no fear in their eyes. The new upgrades thrummed inside them like living fire. They moved to the control decks, their hands brushing against panels that now responded to thought, and will more than touch. Engines roared alive, weapons spun into readiness, shields pulsed with power stronger than before, and the ship itself seemed eager like a beast unleashed from chains. As the enemy fleet closed in silence, stretched for a heartbeat only, then the commander gave the order, his voice steady like steel. The human ship surged forward, not away, but toward the storm. The void lit up with fire as beams and missiles crossed paths, explosions painted the darkness. Bright, the upgraded systems danced with the minds of the crew, moving faster than any enemy calculation, and for the first time the humans felt like their ship was part of them, a second body, a second soul. But in the heart of the battle, a warning rose deep inside the commander, a faint whisper, not human and not alien, something old, and hidden inside the upgrades. It spoke a single word: survive. But survive at what cost? The whisper echoed like thunder in his mind as the enemy flagship locked onto them and prepared a weapon so massive it could tear the station and the human ship into pieces. The commander clenched his jaw and prepared for the next move, knowing the real test had only begun and that the upgrades may hold more secrets than gifts. The alarms across the alien vessel echoed like a storm rolling through endless steel corridors, and the lights pulsed red with every warning cry, as if the ship itself was bleeding through its walls. And in the heart of this chaos, the human named Daniel stood with his chest rising and falling like a warrior preparing for the last strike, because every system was collapsing and every alien officer around him had given up, believing the end was near. Yet Daniel still refused to bend, because bending was never the human way. The main reactor roared with fire as sparks jumped like angry stars, and the air itself seemed ready to rip apart, and the alien engineers shouted numbers and codes in panic. But no command held weight anymore, because fear had already drowned their hearts, and the only voice that cut through the panic was Daniel's voice, calm but sharp like a blade forged in the hottest fire, as he called everyone to keep moving, to keep fighting, to keep holding their ground, even if all they could do was take one more step toward survival, because one more step was always better than no step at all. The captain of the alien crew, a tall figure with silver skin, looked at Daniel with eyes that no longer held despair, but wonder, because what kind of creature could still stand so firm when even stars seemed ready to fall? And Daniel simply answered with action, as he dragged a cable across the smoking floor, pulled it into place, and shouted for power to be rerouted through systems that no alien had ever dared to use, because they believed it was too unstable, too dangerous, too close to madness. And yet Daniel demanded it, because danger was not an obstacle to him, it was an invitation. As the wires hummed with new energy, the ship shook and the walls trembled, as if the vessel itself was deciding whether to explode or to be reborn, and the aliens watched with their hands gripping controls they did not understand anymore, while Daniel pressed forward through fire and smoke, his mind racing faster than machines could calculate, because to him this was not just survival, it was creation, it was the human spirit painting life on a canvas made of ruin. The storm outside the ship was worse than any storm the aliens had mapped across galaxies, the gravitational waves tearing space like claws, and the black void swallowing light, as if nothing ever existed. But Daniel looked at it as a challenge to be beaten, not as a monster to fear, and with every command he gave, the aliens felt a strange fire burn inside them, a fire they had never known, a fire that said, maybe we can survive, maybe we can fight, maybe we can win, because if one human can carry such defiance, then why not us too? The final sequence of the reactor lit up, and the countdown began, a sequence that the aliens always feared to even approach, but Daniel treated it like a puzzle, like a machine waiting for the right hands to unlock it, and he moved with speed, his fingers guiding controls while his mind screamed solutions faster than fear could catch them. And then with one pull, one last roar of command, he threw the sequence into motion, and the ship shuddered with a violent cry that felt like death and rebirth, colliding in a single breath. The flames vanished in a rush of cold air as power surged, not in destruction, but in pure strength, and every screen on the bridge lit with green signals as the ship was reborn, stronger, faster, alive. And for a moment, silence wrapped around everyone, silence not of fear, but of awe, because they had witnessed the impossible. They had seen a human repair what should have been broken forever, and in that repair, they had received an upgrade, not just of metal and energy, but of spirit and courage. The captain approached Daniel with heavy steps and words that carried the weight of an entire species, because for them this moment was not just survival, it was revelation, and the captain declared that no longer would they see humans as reckless wanderers or fragile beings. Instead, They would see them as the carriers of fire, the bringers of renewal, the ones who could find a path where none existed, and Daniel only gave a tired smile, wiping ash from his face, because to him this was simply what humans did when the universe said no. They answered with yes. When the universe said impossible, they answered with watch us. But even as victory filled the air, a new warning cut through the ship. The storm outside was changing, growing, pulling with greater force, as if it had been waiting for this moment to strike harder, and the aliens turned back to fear. But Daniel stared at the void with steady eyes and spoke with certainty that if they had survived fire, they could survive the storm too, because upgrades were not only in machines, they were in hearts and minds and the will to push further. So with renewed strength, the crew followed him, once more their hands moving fast, their voices now firm as they echoed his commands, and together they turned the ship toward the storm, not away, because Daniel knew the only way to escape was to cut through the center where no one else dared to go. And as the engines screamed louder than thunder, the vessel surged forward like a spear of light, piercing the darkness. Every second stretched into eternity as the ship battled the tearing waves of gravity, the shaking void, the endless pull that wanted to break them apart. But Daniel stood tall like the anchor of their will, and the aliens found themselves shouting with him, not in fear, but in defiance, and their voices rose higher than the storm itself. And in that chorus, they were no longer just a crew. They were something new, something greater, something upgraded by the human way. The vessel broke through the final wall of the storm, and a blaze of light brighter than a sun being born, and silence followed, not the silence of despair, but the silence of victory, the silence that says we made it, we lived, we became more, and as stars stretched before them clear and endless, the aliens looked at Daniel with gratitude deeper than words, and he only answered with a nod, because to him the story was not ending, it was only beginning, because survival was only the first upgrade. The next would be discovery and beyond that creation. The stars ahead shimmered with promise, and the aliens whispered among themselves of a future that had never been possible before, a future where they would build with humans, learn with humans, and fight with humans. And they understood that the greatest repair they had received was not to their ship, but to their belief, and the greatest upgrade was not in their systems, but in their souls. And Daniel knew that one truth would echo across the galaxy forever. Yet, as hope filled the ship, a shadow passed across their sensors, a signal faint but powerful, unknown, and waiting in the dark, and Daniel felt his heart steady once more, because the universe was never done testing humanity, and humanity was never done answering. And so the story closed not with an end, but with a beginning, as the human way always demanded.